Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning. How many students were there in the previous class? Mudit, how many were there in the previous class, beta?
I'm not quite sure. The previous was actually combined with A section A.
Okay. Chalo, I'm gonna share my screen with you. Let me know if you're able to see it or not.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Hmm. Can you see it? Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Chalo,
ma'am.
let's get started. कंडीशन ऑफ इंडियन सोसाइटी इन द प्रीवियस एरा जो हमने कल पढ़ा था उसका थोड़ा सा वीडियोस देखेंगे आज ठीक है एंड देन विल मूव फॉरवर्ड
No, 19th century wala.
yep audio is
Hello, children. We all know that the Indian society has undergone tremendous changes in the last 2 centuries. To understand this, we are going to first learn about the condition of the Indian society in the 19th century in order to understand why there was a need for social reforms during and after that period. Today, you see that girls enjoy equal rights with boys in the society. They jointly go to schools, colleges, and universities. They are free to do jobs. The laws of India ensure that women have all the rights regarding marriage and remarriage. They also have the right to vote. They can also hold official posts in the government. Though some women of poor and uneducated families are deprived of their rights, the general situation is improving. But this was not the situation about 200 years ago. At that time, girls were married off at an early age. Their husbands could also have many wives. Widows were being burnt on the pyres of their husband, and these satis, meaning virtuous women,
do you remember what was this
women
children
had limited property rights. Most women were uneducated, and it was
do you remember what was this the women were being burning the women being burned alive on the funeral pyre what was this called
Ma'am
Ma'am,
Sati.
sati
Sati.
right
believed that if they were educated, they would end up being widows. Having now understood the wide gender disparity in Indian society in the 19th century, is it fair to say that this was the only kind of prevalent social difference in India at that time? No, for besides these differences between men and women, Indian society was also divided on the basis of caste. Brahmins and Kshatriyas belonged to the upper caste. Vaishyas, which included traders and money lenders, came after them. After them came peasants and artisans. Both classes.
just to so right now they have asked you that what do you think that there was only gender discrimination back then or there were further more discriminations as well what do you
Ma'am,
think
there
Shruti?
were other.
There were other
Other
was
options as well.
us. The bottommost category was classified for those who worked to ensure cleanliness in villages and cities, or jobs seen as polluting. They were considered untouchables by the upper castes. These untouchables had no right to enter temples or even draw water from the wells used by the upper caste people.
You
They
might
were
have
considered to be inferior.
remembered, children, no, when we have read about this untouchability thing, that how the untouchables have been treated. We have read this in civics recently, right?
Yes,
Remember?
ma'am.
Yeah. So that's what they're
Yes,
saying, that
ma'am.
there was not only a caste, there was not only gender discrimination, there was also caste discrimination where the untouchables were treated like that. We have already read this in civics, that they were barred from entering temples, they could not draw water from the same wells as that of upper caste, and many more.
Now let's understand what exactly happened in the 19th and 20th centuries to bring about changes in society. We know that in the early 19th century, the advent of newspapers, magazines, and pamphlets brought about a lot of changes. These mediums of communication spread information all over the country. Through these publications, people started getting to know about what was happening in the society. Much of the ordinary folk read and wrote different ideas through these mediums. Many issues, whether they were social, political, religious, or economic, etc., were discussed. These discussions sometimes could be linked to movements that advocated for social change.
Okay, guys, in which century did the advent of newspapers, magazines help to stop the social evils in India? Tell me.
Ma'am, 19th century.
Sure. Shall I mark this? Lock कर दें, guys. Sure, let's go with it. Correct.
The pioneers of change in the society were Indian reformers and reform groups. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was one such reformer. He established the Brahmo Sabha, a reform organization in Calcutta, which was later known as Brahmo Samaj. People like Ram Mohan Roy were called reformers because they tried to remove the unjust elements of Indian society and tried to persuade people to give up outdated practices. Here is a quick recap of what we have learned so far.
Okay, children, so अभी तक हमने यही पढ़ा that about 200 years ago, women were largely uneducated, they had limited property rights, and they had to follow Sati Pratha, right? Then there was society was divided on the basis of caste, where the loose ones were known as untouchables, and they also faced a lot of discrimination. But the Indian Renaissance, which we had read about yesterday, started in the 19th century, where new forms of communication came in through magazines, newspapers, and pamphlets, and people started communicating their ideas. And who is known as the father of Indian Renaissance, children?
Ma'am, Raja Ram Mohan Roy.
Raja Ram Mohan
Mohan.
Roy, right? Because he was the first person who started reforming these ideas. समझ में आया?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so next. Yeah. Let's see the efforts to uplift the condition of widows.
Dear children, we know that the women of 19th century India, unlike those of today, did not enjoy equal rights in Indian society. Their life was difficult. Hence, many thinkers and reformers came forward to change this condition.
Do you agree with the statement that earlier women did not have the equal access of rights as they have today?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay.
In this topic, we are going to talk about how the lives of widows were changed. It was Raja Ram Mohan Roy who first took action in this field. He opposed the burning of widows on the funeral pyres of their husbands.
Can you see this picture?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Can you see how dangerous it is? Matlab, what were they doing? Chaliye.
And launched a campaign against this sati pratha. He tried to make the people aware through his writings that ancient texts did not approve any such traditions or customs. He was a learned man, having good command over Sanskrit, Persian, and several other Indian and European languages. The British officials paid attention to his words, as he was a reputed man.
See, just because he was a learned and reputed man, not only the Indians but also the Britishers listened to him because they know that okay, he's not talking anything just like that, right? He is an educated man. He had certain respect in the society, right? Because of which everybody listened to what he was trying to say as well, right? It's very important to gain education. See, that's why we tell you again and again that if you really want to bring a change, then first you need to be the change. If you want people to be educated, you yourself need to be educated as well.
Reputed man. At this time, the British had a dislike for many Indian traditions and customs. Therefore, Sati Pratha was banned in 1829.
Can you name the Indian customs which Britishers did not like or they didn't approve of?
Sati Pratha.
Ma'am, caste system.
Caste system.
Ma'am, untouchability.
It will come under caste system only. Child marriages.
Ma'am, widow remarriages.
Widow remarriage. पे तो वो चाहते थे
Ma'am, dowry.
widow forced widowhood के against है. Dowry. Chal.
With the efforts of Raja Ram Mohan Roy.
Achha, this date is very important. In which year Sati Pratha was banned?
Ma'am, 1829.
Correct. Correct.
The reformers also adopted Raja Ram Mohan Roy's strategy. They also took help from sacred ancient texts.
Can you tell me the meaning of sacred ancient text? Sacred का मतलब क्या होता है बेटा?
Ma'am, which have religious values.
Very good one. Sacred means which have religious values. So ना बाद में जो reformers आए after Raja Ram Mohan Roy, they found this trick to be very useful. उन्होंने कहा चलो इनको इन्हीं की चीज से हराते हैं कि उस टाइम पे जो सोसाइटी थी वो अपनी बहुत रिलीजन गाती थी तो उसने कहा ठीक है दिखाओ आपके रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट में कहाँ लिखा है ऐसा जो आप क्लेम कर रहे हो अगर उसमें नहीं लिखा है इसका मतलब ये गलत है. Right? So later reformers also took help of sacred and ancient texts to fight against the evil customs, whether it was forced widowhood, whether it was child marriage, whether it was caste system, and so on.
Proved that such practices were contrary to earlier traditions. Do you know about any such reformer who used this strategy to improve the condition of women in India? Yes, a very well-known and learned reformer, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, used ancient texts to prove that widows too had the right to get married, which was largely frowned upon.
Right? So it was ईश्वर चंद्र विद्या सागर ये आपको नाम याद रखना है ईश्वर चंद्र विद्या सागर was the social reformer who took the help of these ancient texts to prove that even widows are allowed to remarry. Okay.
At that time, British officials were also in his favor. Hence, a law was passed in 1856 that allowed widows the right to remarriage.
Okay, children, so please do not write here that the Britishers were against. No, Britishers were not against this remarriage act. They supported, right? They were against forced widowhood. बताइए, in which year the British officials passed a law that allowed widows to right to remarriage?
Ma'am, 1856.
57?
Ma'am, 56.
Let's see. 56 is correct.
Since there were some people in society who were against this thought, they boycotted Vidyasagar. Nevertheless, the
देखो अभी भी ऐसा कुछ होता है, हम कोई चेंज ना चाहे सोसाइटी में तो उसे सपोर्ट करने वाले होते हैं, तो उसके अगेंस्ट भी बहुत सारे लोग जाने वाले होते हैं, राइट? तो उस टाइम पे भी यही हुआ था कि बहुत सारे लोगों ने इनको अपोज किया, नहीं ये गलत है, आप हमारी सोसाइटी चेंज कर रहे हो, बट ही केप्ट वॉकिंग ऑन हिज पाथ.
movement in favor of widow remarriage spread to other parts of India by the second half of the 19th century. An association for widow remarriage was formed by Vireshwalingam Pantulu in the Telugu-speaking areas of Madras Presidency.
So see, this did not even get restricted only to northern parts. It reached other parts of India as well, even in the southern parts, right? So Veeraslingam was one person who also advocated the same cause.
Around this time, many intellectuals and reformers in Bombay also came forward for this noble cause. In the north, Arya Samaj, an association founded by Dayanand Saraswati, advocated remarriage. Despite all these efforts, this practice was still not accepted by the society in general. People did not accept remarried widows, and many such laws were opposed by the conservative groups of the society.
बताइए, आर्य समाज किसने सेटअप कराया?
मैम दयानंद
दयानंद
सरस्वती।
सरस्वती।
दयानंद
दयानंद सरस्वती।
Okay. Association of Widow Remarriage.
मैम ईश्वर चंद्र विद्यासागर।
विश्वलिंगम पंथुलु।
Ancient texts were used by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, है ना? Just like Raja
Yes, ma'am.
Ram Roy. And Sati Pratha was banned by,
राजा राम मोहन रॉय।
let's see. All correct. Good.
Society. Here is a quick recap of this session for your better understanding.
See, any doubts still here? Anything you would like to ask or you would like to add to?
No, ma'am.
Shall we move further?
Yes, ma'am.
Dear children, we know that the women
Now let's talk about our education and women reformers.
Dear students, we know that life was not easy for women in our country ages ago, and it still isn't. They were considered to be second-class citizens in society. But during 19th century, with the efforts of many leaders and reformers, women came into their own. But to enable women to stand on their own feet, it was important to educate them, to open their minds to more possibilities and give them more freedoms. Vidyasagar and some other reformers took initiative in this field. They started schools for girls in Calcutta and Bombay. But it was hard for society to accept this change. People felt that these schools might mislead their daughters. If girls were educated, they might dislike household work. People thought that while going to school, they would encounter the public and it might corrupt them. It was commonly believed that women were considered safe only within the walls of their home.
Right, so ऐसा नहीं था कि लोगों ने कोशिश नहीं करी. There were many social reformers who were trying from ages, right, to uplift women, to try to bring them to school. But people were very skeptical about sending women to school. They were like, no, they will get polluted, this and that. So people were not ready to send their daughters to school for these reasons.
Therefore, people who were a little liberal in their outlook towards women but did not like to send them to school arranged for private tutors for them at home. Several women who desired to gain knowledge educated themselves. Do you remember the name of Rashundari Devi, whom you read about in your previous session? She learned to read and write secretly at night under the light of a candle, as she was not allowed to read by her family members. Later, Arya Samaj came forward in Punjab and opened schools for girls. Jyotirao Phule did the same in Maharashtra In North India, Muslim women of aristocratic families were taught the Quran in Arabic by women tutors at home. Reformers like Mumtaz Ali took help of the verses of the Quran and tried to make people understand that education was necessary for women also. We find that the first Urdu novels originated in the late 19th century. The message in the novels was to teach women about religion and house management. The Begums of Bhopal took a very important and active role in educating women in the 20th century. They opened a primary school at Aligarh. A school for Muslim girls in Calcutta and Patna was started by Begum Rokeya Sakhawat Hussain. She openly criticized conservative ideas, stating that all religious leaders considered women to be in.
बताओ आर्य समाज came forward in which state? हाँ जी
Punjab.
मैम पंजाब
Jyotirao Phule did the same in
Maharashtra.
Maharashtra.
a school for Muslim girls is in
Calcutta.
Calcutta.
Calcutta, was started by Begum Ruqayya Sakhawat Hussain. She openly criticized.
Conservative.
Conservative.
Good. Correct.
The gates of universities and colleges were then opened to women. They chose to be doctors and teachers as well. Women
Can you spot the globe here, kids?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see the globe? So
Yes, ma'am.
getting education. They started
Yeah.
going to schools and universities.
writers started writing openly on topics relating to women. We find a book called Stree Purush Tulna, written by Tarabai Shinde, in which she criticizes the societal difference between men and women. Tarabai Shinde was a woman from Pune who received education at home. We cannot forget the initiative by Pandita Ramabai, a great Sanskrit scholar in this matter. She opposed those practices of Hinduism that promoted ideas supporting differences between men and women. The miserable lives of upper caste women can be seen through her book. She also established a home of widows at Pune. These widows were tortured by the family members of their husbands. Here, women were given shelter as well as training to earn their livelihood. But these changes disturbed the minds of Orthodox Hindus and Muslims. They feared that their family values and cultures would be destroyed by.
Right, so this we have already read and discussed in chapter 5 as well. And these changes were not at all welcomed by the Orthodox Hindus. They were like, no, all this is going to pollute our society and destroy our society and values, right?
Educating women. They might be westernized if they were educated. All these things make it clear that by the end of the 19th century, women had taken the reins of reformation and education into their own hands. They were writing books, editing magazines, opening schools and training centers, and forming women's associations. From 20th century onwards, they took a step further. We see that women had started to raise their voice against the laws that undermined their value. In this context, we may mention the right to vote that they were demanding. They also urged for better healthcare and education for women. They started participating in national and social movements. Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose and other such leaders supported their right to equality and freedom. National leaders assured them that they would also have their voice heard in new and independent India. Till then, these leaders demanded their active participation in freedom struggles. And it is important to note that this half population of the society played a significant role in making India an independent nation. Now, here is a quick recap of this session for your better understanding.
Any doubts still here, kids?
Yeah, ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yes, please ask.
In the starting, like we were taught that women had equal right and as men, but how did it get that bad?
People, see, we were talking about the early Vedic age, right? So it was the early Vedic age when they had equal rights as long like no as of men. But like I told you yesterday as well, Mudit, what happened is that not everybody was educated with Sanskrit, right? And then what these priests started doing is they started interpreting the Vedas and Upanishads in their own manner, right? And no, so that is how they started putting these things. So they started realize this, it is people on their own who start feeling and women are meant for this only. They can't do this. They are not opted for this. Like we read in the case of Razia Sultan, right? When her own father had faith in her, showed faith in her, and no considered her to be the higher instead of his sons. Then also society was not able to accept it. That no, no, no. How could we do this? How could we take rules? How could we take no? क्या बोलते हैं उसको? How could we take decisions from a women? How could we take orders from a women? So people were the ones who did all these things on their own. ठीक? यहाँ तक समझ में आया?
Yes, ma'am.
चलो अभी तक देखते हैं आपका प्राप्त जो अपने इसके बारे में क्या क्या पता है. Why were women not educated for years? Tell me the answer.
Ma'am, A. Ma'am, A.
Ma'am, A.
Okay. Next. Match the columns.
Ma'am, D.
Married women, Sati, below
C.
Shudras,
Untouchables.
females,
Inaccessibility
Irreducibility
definition.
to education.
construction worker. I think D would be the answer.
Yes, ma'am.
To increase engagement of lower segments of society, government began the midday meal scheme. Which state started the scheme first? Hanji, do you know? A. Tamil Nadu, B. Gujarat, C. Maharashtra, D. Karnataka. Hanji, I cannot hear you, beta. Which state started the midday meal first? That's Tamil Nadu. Next is read the statements and identify the correct statement. To give each equal caste equal status, the Constitution of India talks about the principle of secularism. क्या ये statement सही है? कौन बोल रहा है लगातार?
Ma'am,
बताइए.
first statement was correct.
No, first statement is not correct, beta. Equal
Ma'am,
status is
2,
a
3,
caste.
4.
Yeah, 2, 3, 4 would be correct. Assertion. These days, the government cannot call itself democratic unless it allows what is known as universal adult franchise. Reason. In a democracy, people choose their representatives to make and run the government.
Ma'am, both are true.
Ma'am, both
As
are.
the
Both assertion and reasons are the
question.
A, B, C, D.
Ma'am,
Ma'am,
A.
A.
I doubt so. Let's see. All is correct. Submit करना है. You have done too wrong. Total score achieved 3. कौन से आंसर्स गलत किए हैं आपने? Incorrect answer 2. देखा, I was saying this is wrong. ए कौन कौन से गलत हुए हैं? Right answer C. Does believe that she should bring back bad luck to her husband and become widow. C was पहले वाले का आंसर था. Then हमारा B तो सही था. ठीक है. थर्ड भी सही था. हमारा ये गलत था. I think fourth. Correct answer was B. I was telling you that I have doubt in this. You were doing wrong. So B was the correct. Like assertion and reasons are true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. ठीक? Got that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
चलो आगे बढ़े.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Dear students, during the 19th century, we see many changes in our society. The entire society was shackled in the chains of caste system. There was inequality in castes also. Then social reformers came forward to eradicate this inequality from society. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, a great thinker and reformer, translated an old Buddhist text and tried to make people understand that all men were equal before God. He was very critical of the caste system. The Prarthana Samaj, which was associated with bhakti, did not believe in the caste system and preached spiritual equality of all castes. Paramhans Mandali in Bombay tried its best to abolish the caste system in the Indian society. It is noteworthy that most of these reformers belong to the upper caste. They tried to lead by example. Sometimes they took food.
See, did you pay attention to that? It was noteworthy. मतलब ये सारे के सारे जो रिफॉर्मर्स थे ये ज्यादातर खुद अपर कास्ट से थे, राइट? एंड ये लोग अपने ही कास्ट के दिए हुए जो भी रीजंस थे या जो भी चीजें थी उसको अपोज कर रहे थे कि व्हाट दे आर सेइंग इज रॉन्ग. ठीक, सिर्फ और सिर्फ अपर कास्ट के पास ही ये राइट नहीं है कि वो सारे के सारे राइट्स को एक्सेस करे. द लोअर कास्ट आर इक्वल, है ना? सो विच इज ऑल्सो वेरी गुड थिंग टू सी.
Food with the lowest castes in secret meetings and did not mind their touch. This was done to remove caste prejudice from their lives. People then started raising their voices against the injustice done.
Who translated an old Buddhist text and tried to make people aware of equality?
Raja Ram Mohan Roy.
Raja Ram Mohan Bhai.
भाई बोला किसी ने. Correct.
Done to the lower class. Christian missionaries made education accessible to the children of tribal communities and lower castes. These children were then able to make their own path in the changing world. We see that people had started migrating to cities in search of jobs. Factories and municipalities were offering them jobs. We know that cities were expanding and creating new job opportunities for laborers. Diggers, coolies, carriers, bricklayers, sewage cleaners, sweepers, palanquin bearers, rickshaw pullers were required to construct planned cities. The poor people of villages and towns, mainly people of low castes, served this purpose. Some of the labor class people also migrated to the plantations of Assam, Mauritius, Trinidad, and Indonesia. It was not easy for them to adapt themselves to the changed circumstances. but they felt it was better in comparison to the torture the rural upper caste landowners inflicted upon them.
Christian missionaries made education difficult for tribals and lower caste children. True or false?
False.
Ma'am, false.
Ma'am, false.
Correct.
We know that the Mahars were considered to be untouchable, but they had job opportunities in the army in the Mahar regiment. Caste was also a blessing in another case. Leather workers faced discrimination as they worked with dead animals, which was seen as dirty and polluting. During the World Wars, the army required vast quantities of shoes. As most people looked down on leather work, the traditional shoe and leather workers could quote high prices and gain massive profits. For instance, the father of B.R. Ambedkar, the leader of the Dalit movement, was a teacher in an army school. Now let's have a quick recap of this session for better understanding.
Any doubts still here, kids?
No, ma'am.
Did you enjoy this session?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Take care. Sorry.
Dear students, during the 19th
Now I
century,
think after 2
we see
minutes the
many
class is about to get over. So I'll not continue with the next video for now. Hmm. Okay. So try to read till what we have done, right? Whatever we have discussed here, I would request that you should try to read it. Okay, read it in your book. If the same content is there. Okay. चलो देखते तक आपने कितना कितना पढ़ा. Which reformer highlighted invasions as main reason for caste? ये भी हम नहीं पढ़ा है ना अभी. ये भी हमने पढ़ा नहीं है. हम्म. चलो kids, see you tomorrow. Okay, so जितना अभी हमने discuss किया है, please try to read it all from your books. Okay, and then we'll discuss the further in the next class. Okay, children?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you do the new
Okay, ma'am.
words in your notebook? ठीक है? Okay.